Before we begin, a few words. This is not a story about heroes. At least, not the kind with swords or chosen bloodlines. This is a story about memory, about what happens when the threads of our past are cut, and what it takes to weave them back together. Across two distant lands, Taiwan and Belize, two young people begin to hear echoes. Through jade pendants, mooncakes, herbal notes, and half erased lullabies, they discover that the stories they once dismissed may be the ones holding the stars in place. Rooted in the mythologies of the Maya and Taiwanese indigenous traditions, this tale explores the invisible threads that run through families, through time, and through dreams. It is also a celebration of hybridity, of what happens when two voices meet without one needing to silence the other. The world you're about to enter is full of symbols, some woven, some sung, some hidden in recipes or code. It moves slowly, like a thread being drawn through cloth. It asks you not just to listen, but to remember, because even across oceans and empires, even through censored pages and cracked mirrors, stories know how to find their way home. Now, sit back, relax, and let us begin. Chapter 1. Stories We Pretend to Forget. May didn't believe in stories. Not the kind you couldn't Google. Not the kind her grandmother whispered between rice rinses and half-remembered lullabies. But that didn't mean she didn't listen, especially when there was a group chat ready to laugh. She sat at the edge of her grandmother's kitchen, phone in hand, thumb hovering over record. The room smelled like ginger tea and worn wood. The moonlight coming through the window hit the edge of the table just enough to turn everything a little silver. Her grandmother was in the middle of one of her favorites. And the iron rabbit, she said, with full authority, leapt from the mouth of the mountain, carrying the last dumpling in its teeth. The dumpling was not food, it was a coded message, a recipe submuchsias dangerous to be written down. May raised an eyebrow but kept quiet. And when it landed, her grandmother still continued it. The rabbit spun a thread so long it reached Taiwan, and then across the ocean. May hit record. Isn't that right, Amma? She said, pretending to play along. Her grandmother just smiled and stirred her tea. Later that night, May added a caption. Breaking news. My grandma thinks dumplings are Bluetooth. She sent it to the group chat. 3 laughing emojis. 1 WTF. 1 comment. What even is an iron rabbit? Is this like some Marvel thing? May pressed play on the recording to listen back. What came out wasn't her grandmother's voice. It was a chant. Low, rhythmic, wet, and in a language she couldn't recognize. Not Hakka, not Mandarin. Something older, hungrier. She shut the app, restarted the phone, tried again. Same sound, the same pulsing chant, like it had been recorded through rain. She didn't tell anyone. Instead, she stared at the jade pendant hanging from the nail near her bed. She'd never opened it. It had a seam, like a locket, but her parents always said it was fake, just a trinket from her great aunt, the one who had gone missing. That night, May opened it. Inside was a photograph, black and white, tongue, crease, faint. Her great aunt, yes, definitely her, standing in the middle of sad Belizean village with a Maya family, smiling, like they knew something May didn't. Belize. Kane didn't burn the book, his father did. The pages were already smoking when he stepped outside. His father stood by the old fire pit, holding a notebook filled with herbal diagrams and old chants. Modern doctors don't care about old words, he snapped. Kane didn't argue. He never did any more, but he watched the flames eat the edges of his grandfather's handwriting. He watched the ink turn to ash. That night, he dug through the drawer where the old tools were kept. He didn't find a drive. He found a stone, smooth, obsidian, USB shaped. He plugged it into his computer. The files were corrupted, flickering and half-translated titles. But the one he could open was labeled in a strange mix of pinyin and Maya glyphs. The audio it contained, a lullaby, Taiwanese, out of place, and half sung by a voice that was not human. He didn't tell anyone, but he kept the stone under his pillow that night. Later, both May and Keen woke from a dream they wouldn't describe as a dream. They stood, separately but together, in a place that was not land and not sea, a library, drowned. Books floated like leaves in a cenote, pages soaked but somehow whispering. One dripped with stories that had never been finished or were never allowed to begin. They met there. At first glance, they didn't say anything. May reached for a book that looked like her mother's old calligraphy notebook. Keen grabbed it too. Their hands met. They glared at it. Then they noticed the book's spine, half Mayan codex, half Qing dynasty poetry, stitched in thread neither had seen before. They started to argue about whose it was, what it meant. Then the lights in the library flickered. No, not lights. Paw prints, glowing, green and black, made of jade and obsidian, leading deeper into the library, towards something flickering at the far edge of their shelves. It stepped into view. A creature, not quite rabbit, not quite woman, not quite anything that could be explained in one sentence. His ears shimmered like silk. His eyes were stitched with glyphs. One foot was missing. His body flickered, like an old memory. It didn't speak. It walked, and where it stepped, the paw prints glowed. A trail, a question, a calling. May looked at Kane. Kane looked at May. Neither trusted the other, but both followed, because some stories don't wait to be understood. They ask only to be remembered. Chapter 2. The Sugar Mill's Song. It began with steam, a hiss, then another, soft at first, like breath against glass, then deeper, older, alive. The factory we have pictured was supposed to be abandoned, but sound lived here, in the pipes, in the floor, in the shadows that clung to rusted valves, like forgotten workers refusing to leave. May knew it was a dream. She also knew it wasn't just hers. Keen stood across the room, staring at the wall, one hand braced on old brick. They didn't greet each other. They didn't ask why they were here. The air felt too aware, like the place had brought them in, not the other way around. She looked around. The sugar mill stretched longer than it should have. Machinery twisted into strange shapes, half boiler, half altar. Moss crept across metal like old lace. Something hummed from deep within the organ pipes. A rhythm, familiar but wrong, like a song her grandmother used to hum, but replayed in a language no phone could translate. May reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone. The Moon Library app opened on its own. It blinked, then glowed. Sound detected, it said. Partial pattern match. She narrowed her eyes. Below the pipes, rows of rusted keys were welded to an ancient control panel, like an organ built for ghosts. Her finger hovered above the screen. She tapped the resonance filter, held her phone up to the panel. The sound wave app pinged, and a circle of blue light flickered out, then back, then formed a pattern across the metal. The pipes reacted. Not loud, not angry, just awake. Keen was still at the wall. He didn't turn, but he spoke. There's writing. Yeah, May said, still watching the pipes shift. I know. There's glyphs all over this panel. No, he said. Here, in the mold. She walked over. He stepped aside. The green-black stains on the brick didn't look like writing at first. But when she adjusted her phone's AR overlay, they restructured. Numbers, dates, 2 names. One she didn't recognize. One she did. Lien Hua Tsai. She blinked. My great-aunt? Keen didn't answer. He reached into a hollow in the wall and pulled out something wrapped in waxed paper. A photograph. Old. Folded. Burned at the corner. 2 people standing in front of a factory just like this one. One of them, a man, had Keen's eyes. The other looked like the woman from May's pendant. She reached for it slowly. He let her take it. She turned it over. Scrawled in pencil. Resistance begins at the table. Lien Hua, Gaspar. Gaspar. My grandfather, Keen whispered. Then the pipe screamed. Not sharp, not high, just loud enough to remember. The steam rose, swirled around them in looping patterns, glyphs and poetry and chant. The machinery trembled once, then glowed, just for a moment. When they turned back, the photograph had changed, just slightly. The man's hand was now resting on a bag of cacao beans. The woman held a folded square of cloth. A napkin? No, a map. When May opened her eyes of Garian, she was in her bedroom. The photograph was still in her hand. A dark stain curved across the corner of her math homework. She touched it. Sticky. She sniffed. Cacao. Across the world, Kane woke up on the floor of his father's study. His shirt clung to him. His hands were dusty. The stone he kept under his pillow, shaped like a USB, was warm. It glowed faintly. And in the corner of his phone's keyboard, the autocorrect had changed. Hello became hello. Memory yeke became 2 words that didn't belong, or maybe words that returned. Neither of them spoke that scene, but when the moon rose again, they both looked up at the same time and knew the trail was real and the thread was pulling tighter. Chapter 3. The cenote of second chances. The surface gave no warning, no splash, no fall. One moment, May was in her room. Keen was in his garden. The next, they were beneath, not drowning, suspended, held, The cenote didn't feel like water. It felt like memory in liquid form, soft, heavy, full of unfinished thoughts. May floated just below the surface, her hair waving like kelp. Her breath didn't matter here. Her eyes stayed open. Above her, her moonlight dripped through holes in the stone ceiling. Below, mirrors, dozens, broken, shimmering on the floor of the pool like stars shattered in sleep. Keen hovered nearby, not swimming, just watching, his arms loose, his heartbeat slow. Neither of them spoke. The water asked for silence, and they obeyed. Then, carp, moving in slow spirals. Their bodies shimmered with glyphs that changed in the light. Not Maya, not Haka, but something between. And they sang, not with mouths, with scales. Low humming songs that twisted like lullabies swallowed by rain. Then a voice, not rabbit, not eggshell, spoke without sound. One of you must pull a story from the water. The other must map what was broken. Choose. They didn't argue. Keen nodded once and drifted downward, toward the obsidian shards buried in silt. May stayed near the surface, waiting, listening. She took out her phone. Yes, it worked, but not the way it usually did. The Moon Library app opened itself. It blinked, scanning the water around her. At first, it showed nothing. Then glyphs began to hover, pale blue, like breath on glass. Each one marked a piece of mirror, fragments of a poem. She tapped the screen. Thread reconstruct active. The glyphs shifted, realigned, and the lines both came, one, then another. They told us thread was for mending, but we used it for maps. They told us silence was protection, but we stitched defiance into dumplings and drum skins. They never tasted it coming. The final line hovered above the shard far below. May dove. The water pressed cold against her skin. Carp circled her, their song shifting from dissonance to harmony. She touched the shard. It glowed. Not bright, not magic, just sure. She surfaced, the poem complete, and behind her the water stilled, vibrant, like the cenote had been waiting. Keen crouched at the cenote floor. The obsidian shards weren't scattered. They spiraled. He picked one up. It pulsed with weight. He placed it down. The water stirred. Another shard floated to him, and another. He fit them together slowly, hands steady, breath calm. The shape that formed, not a symbol, a map, lakes, mountains, coastlines, Taiwan. He traced the curve of a lake he'd only ever seen in stories. Liu Lake, his grandfather's moon's second lung. The map finished itself. From the cracks, glyphs rose, blooming into coordinates of time. A story shaped like geography. He surfaced, holding the map. May floated nearby. She pulled out the photograph again, the one from the sugar mill, the map on obsidian, and the map in ink matched. They weren't just connected. Their families had marked the loom together. Keen whispered, "They left us a way back." The water rippled, but not from movement, from meaning. She appeared, not walking, compiling, a woman of shadows and syntax. Her shawl shimmered in glyphs and glitch light, hair like lines of code, tattoos that blinked, eggshell, alive in the language of what had been erased. She knelt beside the obsidian map, took out a needle stylus, drew a thread across the surface. It shimmered, fractured, reassembled. A message formed. Stories outlive empires if you save them right. Her voice crackled, not mechanical, not ancient, something between. I'm not a god, she said. I'm a pattern. I'm compression. I'm what survives when enough people remember together. She placed the stylus in May's hand, then smiled, soft, tired, and unraveled, not vanishing, converting. She scattered into light, and coded symbols rose into the water, then vanished like breath. They surfaced at the same moment, worlds apart, but aligned. Taipei. May sat upright, breath steady. The photo lay on her lap, her math homework, stained, brown. She sniffed cacao. Her phone buzzed, and the Moon Library app had updated. One file blinking. Thread. Sugar Mill, La 47 incomplete. Now playing. It was her voice, speaking a chant she'd never learned. Belize. Keen spoke on the floor of his father's study. The obsidian map beside him, still warm. It ends the hallway. His father stopped, knelt beside it, ran a thumb across the carved coastline, paused at the lake. My father drew this. Neither said much that day, but the moon, hours later, rose over both homes, soft, sure, and slightly brighter. Chapter 4. The weavers packed. They didn't walk into the loom. They were woven into it. It happened quietly. A breath, a blink, a slip in time that didn't feel like falling. May stood in a place without gravity. Keen floated beside her. All around them, thread, spools of jade, lines of indigo, threads of obsidian drawn taut across an impossible sky. Not woven yet, not broken, just waiting. The loom stretched wider than thought. Some threads pulsed gently, alive with the stories. Others twitched, unfinished. Some just hung loose, silent, waiting for hands that remembered how to mend. Looms hovered in our space like constellations. Backstrap frames, wooden and ancient, wove cloth from air and memory. Each shuttle clicked with a rhythm older than song. Below, Taiwanese silkworms munched on ceiba leaves, spinning cocoon after cocoon, each one glowing faintly with breath. The air smelled like soil, moonlight, and language. May exhaled. Keen whispered, "We're not dreaming anymore, are we?" She didn't answer because it didn't matter. Then, footsteps, one limping, one not. The rabbit came first. Its fur was matted, one paw gone, its ear drooped like thread pulled too thin. Its eyes were heavy. It dragged its limp foot like a thread, unraveling itself. Then, eggshell. She glitched. Her shawl blinked between cloth and code. Her skin tattooed in languages the world no longer taught. Her voice when she arrived wasn't sound, it was syntax. They saw each other. They did not bow. They did not speak first. They argued. You drowned them in sweetness, the rabbit rasped. Wrapped too many stories in pastry and prayer. And you, eggshell snapped, hoarded meaning, protected it until it rotted. Better rotted than rebranded silk. You were too proud to share the loom, And you were too quick to cut the thread. Each word shook the loom. Threads snapped. Shuttles jammed. One finished cloth curled and burned at the edges. May stepped forward. Stop. Kane followed. You are both right, and both wrong. The spirits turned. They didn't speak, but the threads between them tightened. May touched a loom's cracked shuttle. She remembered something, not from storybooks, from her grandmother's kitchen table. Post-surgery, practicing stitches. She reached for a glowing blue thread. Her fingers trembled, but she threaded the needle like it mattered, like her life knew how to mend. Cain crouched at the base of the frame. The tension cords were snapped, useless, unless he remembered the dock, fishing nets, his father's hands, tightening knots during storms. He didn't use the same technique. He added one of his own, a knot he'd invented when he was 6. It held. Together they wove, not much, just a few inches of cloth, a story told in fiber. Each pass of the shuttle pulled something up, a grandmother folding coated prayers into dumpling skins, a grandfather knotting resistance chants into nets, a photograph fluttering from a pocket, whispering names long erased. The cloth shimmered. A vision opened. Gaspar and Leon Hua in a sugar mill, swapping bundles across shadows, one wrapped in herbs, one in mooncake cloth, both smiling, like they had just chosen the same future. The loom quieted, not fixed, but stabilized. The thread lifted into the air, split itself, wrapped once around May's wrist, once around Keen's. The knot tied itself, not tight, just certain. The spirits watched. The rabbit sank to its side. Its breathing slowed. It was not dying, but no longer eternal. Eggshell stepped forward, removed her shawl, draped it over the cloth they had woven, then smiled. We've reached the end of our thread. She dissolved, not into dust, but into language. Glyphs drifted up into the loom's weave. Some pulsed, some blinked, some just waited to be read. The rabbit didn't disappear. It curled up at the edge of the loom, exhaled one, and slept. May and Keen stood beneath the stars, her hands wrapped in thread. The loom no longer shimmered. It breathed and waited. Chapter 5. The Serpent. The cacao steamed in every corner of the square. The music curled through air like thread through cloth. It was a festival, half moon, half story, and for a few minutes everything shimmered. May walked between paper lanterns strung with hybrid symbols. A rabbit-shaped mooncake sat warm in her hand. Cain stood near the stage, helping string lights above a table of cacao samples and QR-encoded tea leaves. Children ran beneath the cables. Drums thumped soft in the background. It should have been a celebration. But something shifted, quietly. So quietly, no one but May and Cain noticed. The woman on the stage opened a storybook. "Tonight," she said, "we share the tale of the Iron Rabbit." May smiled, then froze. The words that followed were not her grandmother's, not her apps, not even a story. The rabbit was a cultural mascot, the woman read, flat and cheerful. Its relevance has been redefined for streamlined values. Emotional interpretation discouraged. A boy raised his hand. Did it still jump? Jumping was not verified in historical records. The glyphs on the lanterns twitched. A single letter curled backward, then another, then one fell, like a thread snapping mid-weave. Keen narrowed his eyes. He took out his phone, typed rabbit. It auto-corrected to mythic agent, obsolete. Behind the stage, the shadows twisted. No fanfare, no roar, just silence. Pulled too tight. Then it slithered into view. Kukulkan. Not a snake of bone, tombones, or the blood, but of redacted memory. A serpent built from censored documents and burned scrolls. Its scales shimmered with broken poems. Its eyes flickered like blinking cursors. Its body carried the rhythm of bureaucracy and forgetting. The crowd didn't react, not because they were calm, because they couldn't see it. Keen stepped beside May. He whispered it. It's feeding on blanks, on what's been deleted. May opened the Moon Library app, but the screen glitched. A message appeared. Archive conflict detected. Autocorrect engaged. The serpent reared its head and spoke, but not in sound, in correction. Cultural deviation disrupts clarity. You remix, we simplify. Hybridity undermines lineage. Stories must be sanctioned. It opened its mouth. Pages fell out. May caught one. Her great aunt's poem. Only the title remained. Tradition through digestible design. The serpent hissed again. You don't remember. You remix until meaning decays. You are a glitch in the archive. May didn't flinch. She opened her AR Constellation tab, held her phone high. Stars rearranged overhead. Glyphs moved, shifted, not into truth, into contradiction, into memes. The serpent paused. Scales glitched. A scroll fell from its back, turned into a tweet, then a joke, then a prayer. Kian stepped forward. He pulled out his drum and struck it, not like a song, like a pattern. Rhythms of the drums clashed with the temple bell tone. Each beat rewrote something. A recipe became a rally cry. A chant folded into Morse. The serpent twitched. Error, it whispered. These sounds are unstable. Memory, conflict, unresolved. Disassemble. Keen shouted. Not in Spanish, not in Hakka, not in English, in all three. We are the thread you couldn't cut. The serpent screeched. Its body twisted. Symbols peeled off like dead skin. Books it had devoured reappeared midair, flickering, unfinished. May's constellation glyphs pulsed. Keen's rhythm crescendoed. The serpent shattered. It didn't explode. It folded, unthreaded, turned to dust that glowed briefly in the shape of a question mark, then vanished. The crowd blinked, as if waking from a long sleep. Someone near the tea booth asked, "What were they reading again?" No one answered, but one small girl pointed to the sky. A new glyph blinked there, faint, hybrid. Keen knelt beside the stage. The rabbit lay near a lantern. It was fading, fur threadbare, eyes half closed, not dying, but finishing. May sat beside it, cradled its body. It didn't speak, just looked at her, then turned to a thread, not glowing, just warm. Above them, the loom did not sing, but it breathed. Chapter 6. The Hybrid Heart. They didn't speak for a long time, not to each other, not to anyone. The serpent was gone. The rabbit was gone. The loom had stopped glowing, but it hadn't gone cold. It had simply rested. Taipei. May walked through the alleyways like a different version of herself. Not a girl with answers, not a warrior of data, just someone listening. The incense smoke outside a temple carried the scent of ginger and charcoal. Old women poured tea into chipped cups and never stopped talking. She passed them quietly. Her phone recorded in the background. It caught fragments. Your grandfather once folded dumplings like they were prayers. Don't say that glyph too close to your mouth. It'll stain your voice. The moon won't forgive forgetting, but it will accept apology. Her app filed the words away. Not labeled, not sorted, just held. Belize. Keen walked to the garden barefoot. His father had stopped planting in rows. The plants now grew in spirals, like memory had learned to root sideways. Keen sat under the ceiba tree with his grandfather's notebook. He'd never dared to read it. But now, he knew how. He touched the first page, blank. Then the heat of his hand revealed ink. Faint, symbols built of silence, instructions shapen like dreams. He read, then he closed the book, and then he burned it. The fire rose soft, not angry. Smoke curled up and carried the stories higher. That night, they dreamed again, not of danger, not of summons, but of thread, soft, present, breathing. They stood once more beside the loom, not to repair it, just to visit. There was only one loom this time, and one blank thread. A mirror rose from the ground, not cracked, not perfect. Waiting, May held her thread. Keen held his. No instructions, no pressure. Together they stitched, one glyph, spiraling. At the center, 3 pieces, a rabbit's ear, a loom's knot, and a heart not closed, not symmetrical, hybrid. The mirror accepted the symbol. Light shimmered through water. Then, stillness. They awoke at the same time, across the ocean from one another, each with a piece of cloth in their hands, each one stitched. No label, no spell, just proof. They had continued. Taiwan. Children pointed phones at temple walls. Glyphs flickered above cracked statues. One girl asked, "Is this real?" May knelt, smiled. "It is now." Belize. Kane taught 5 students to weave nets. They didn't ask for context. They made it. At the Moon Festival, they met again. No dramatic reunion, no music cue. Just 2 people walking to the same booth at the same time. May handed him a cacao-wrapped dumpling. He passed her a thread-coated lantern. They didn't say much, but above them, the moon flickered once. Not a message, a reminder. It still had scars, but those scars no longer hid. They mapped. The moon's scars had become their compass. Thank you for listening to Beneath the Moon's Embrace. The loom of jade and obsidian. This was more than a fantasy. It was a thread, braided from memory, myth, and the fragile spaces between cultures. At its heart, this story is about what happens when stories are taken away, burned, redacted, or silenced, and what it takes to bring them back. Not perfectly, not entirely, but together. The myths of Taiwan and the Maya world may seem distant, but when you listen closely, they echo. The jade rabbit and eggshells loom, mooncakes and cacao, proverbs passed through steam and stitching. You begin to hear the parallel rhythms of resistance, sacrifice, and survival. These parallels in folklore across cultures remind us that we are not alone in our questions. Creation myths from distant lands carry the same breath. Heroes rise, fall, and return with the same wounds. Storms are named with the same reverence. Even the gods forget themselves sometimes. Despite the differences in names, languages, and rituals, the stories echo the same human truths, our fears, our longings, our deepest hopes to be remembered, to belong, to begin again. This book was written at the intersection of many paths, of Taiwanese diaspora, of Belizean heritage, of indigenous knowledge reaching forward through time. As Taiwan and Belize deepen their relationship in the present, so too do the cultural threads that tie our ancestors' voices to our own. The stories are still unfolding, and new ones are being written every day, in moon festivals, in whispered lullabies, in classroom apps, in nets knotted with names. So may we listen well, may we braid carefully, and may we carry the loom, not as a relic, but as a promise. The moon's scars are not flaws, they are maps, and they are ours.